Hello, everyone. It's Rafael Gutierrez. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to actually talk about this book, My Art and Skill of Karate by Chokumotobu. And this is the translation by Andre Quast. And I think he usually tells me that he had help translating as well. And this one was actually translated by Motobu Naoki. And I am actually mentioning the name because last time I did this, Mr. Quast told me, look, it wasn't my work alone. Please mention the other person. So I am going to mention Motobu. What was it? Sorry, I didn't remember. Motobu Naoki was the other gentleman who helped translate it. First off, I'm going to tell you, if you have any interest in the old martial arts, the old karate, this is actually, I will tell you right away, this is a must-have, even if you have other versions of this book. I actually have a different type one. I'm not going to mention which ones I have, but I will tell you one of the things I noticed. First, one of the big things is this. If you notice the size of this book, it's actually, pretty nice, decent-sized book, about 200 plus pages. And so it is a lot bigger than most books. Now, when I asked him I did try to contact Mr. Quast, and he told me that the reason his was bigger was because of formatting. He actually said the pictures he actually used were a little bigger. What else did he tell me? He actually had a complete copy of the book, and some people didn't have the copy of the book when they did the translation. Some of them had copies of copies, which makes it a little more difficult. The other interesting thing about the book is the pictures, the quality. And I'm just going to go to one of the pictures, and you'll see what I mean. Now, remember, these are old pictures taken from text, but you can see that they are actually pictures that you've seen before on the internet from Motobu. Unfortunately, a lot of these images are hard to see. It does have a lot of information, even for being 200 pages. People think, 200 pages. It's really, the best way to describe it is if you think of certain types of poetry where you may have a couple stanzas, but those stanzas have a lot of power. This is actually one of those books that has a lot to it besides just looking at the page and saying, what it is and what it isn't. Now, a couple things I do like, I really do enjoy the book, by the way, I will mention. But a couple things I would point out of the book is if you were to look at the table of content, you'll notice that it talks about the mottos, which I think was in the old books, karate origin and significance, lineages, short introduction to Kempo, how to make a fist. It actually has a lot of different things. One of the things I really enjoyed for me was the information on the Hanshi kata. Now, I tend to actually believe that there's no real right or wrong way to do stuff, the different ways because of what you're trying to do for it. He actually does mention in the book a lot of places how to actually stand for Naihachi the way Motobu Shoki would do it. And for me, that was pretty important because he tended to want a functional karate. And so he was actually known for the kata, which was a big thing. The other big thing that is important about this book is there's old rumors, which who knows where they started, but they talked about how Motobu couldn't write. And right away, you realize this was an extremely literate person. And I don't know what his education was, but a lot of the stuff he actually meant when he mentions how the body moves, how to get more stability, a lot of it is dead on. And I had actually noticed that, at least for me, this translation was clearer for me than the other one I've actually read. And so, great book. Like I said, Andre Quast, one of the big things, he actually did tell me that he had access to the entire book rather than parts of it. He didn't have scanned versions. He had the actual book. He was able to get the print. And so that's why he was telling me, I told him how I saw it as extremely high quality book. He said, well, it was because I had access to this. And probably I think he's a little more modest than most people. It is a great book. I highly recommend it. It is available on Amazon. If you go Amazon and Google Quast's last name, you'll actually find it. And I'm going to actually spin off and tell you guys something else that I actually believe, especially with these books. We are actually in a really interesting time for martial arts, in that we do have people like Andre Quast, Mario McKenna. There's actually a lot of other people. I can't even mention all of them. Classical Fighting Arts Magazine is one of my favorite. But we have a lot of these people who are actually coming out with great translations of old works. And for a long time, we didn't have access to this. I mean, you think about, I actually will tell you one story about me. I found there was one book I wanted, which was a translation, and one publisher had the copyright to it. I called the publisher, and the secretary had told me that they had 20 people who had requested that book, but she didn't know anything about if the book was going to be made public ever. But she transferred me over to her supervisor, and her supervisor told me that, well, people are just not interested in that book because there's another book that has a similar title, which nobody's buying. The other book was actually written by someone who was a self-proclaimed 10th Dan. I think he was 20 years old when he wrote the book. And it wasn't the same book. I mean, the gentleman didn't have the reputation that the original translator did. And so one of the things is, before it was really hard for people to get pretty much the books you needed. And now we actually are in a position where we do have translators. We do have people producing it. And I would tell you this. Think about that when you're actually looking for information. There's a lot of free information on the internet. And a lot of that free information comes from books like this. But the only way that these are going to expand is if people do pretty much help out the people who made these books. I mean, I will tell you, I wrote a book. I tried to translate it a little bit, and it was the most time-consuming, hard work I could actually think of. I ended up stopping because it was just too much. We do have people who are translating, and they really do deserve our support. So one of the things I would tell you is when you do look at stuff, when you look at books, when you look at videos, and you notice that they are actually written by someone, or people are mentioning certain people for, this is a book you need to get, it is a good idea to at least take a look at it. And especially when people start getting reputations, it's a good idea to help support them when you can. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was short. There was another thing I was going to talk about. I'm sorry. I have been getting some questions, which I really love. I want to thank the people who have, and I'm going to mention them in the next video because I'm going to address this again. Now, someone had asked about, when I talked about the knuckles, why the hammer fist didn't necessarily break. And that actually has an interesting thing, and I'm going to cover it in depth when I go into muscles. If you actually take your hand and you feel the bone of the fifth metacarpal, you'll notice that next to it, you have a big chunk of muscle. For mine, it's about the size of my thumb. So you have about a muscle, in me at least, the size of the thumb. The bone in the hand is maybe not even close to that. And so when you actually do come and hit bottom fist, you actually pretty much think of it as a soft hammer and then something protecting it over there. So when you hit, you actually have protection for the bone. So it's one of the reasons that doesn't break. I will address it again when I go into the anatomy next week. I hope you enjoy this, and we'll have a nice day.